What is up, sports fans? Welcome back to another installment of the Sport Bros on Tap podcast slash YouTube show. Welcome you in here with one of your hosts, Matt, and I'm sitting in with my brother Cody. Go ahead, tell the people something.
How's it going, everybody? I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm excited to do a show with my brother, talk a little bit of sports, talk a little bit of fantasy. Not too happy as a Niners fan today, a little disappointed. I mean, I think it's kind of the result that all of us kind of in the back of our minds were expecting, though, or kind of we brace ourselves for it. So that's besides the point. New day, we got a whole, at least now we don't have to worry about them on NFL Sunday. We can just kick back and worry about those fantasy numbers. I know it's getting into crunch time and a lot of injury time for fantasy and everything like that, and people going crazy finding value picks and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the avenue that we're going to take you on today, and hopefully it helps you out. And so hopefully you all enjoy the show.
Yeah, well, short and sweet. Something apparently the vote polling people can't get right because I tell you what, we're on about day 4 of the election already, and so yeah, I mean that's about the biggest news going on. But we're trying to keep it on fantasy, but in a crazy election year. And man, let's try to get our minds off it a little bit with this Sunday. And so, like Cody said, we're going to be talking about fantasy sports, fantasy football, and we're going to take a daily task, a daily look at it. None of this year long stuff. I just honestly, I did the research. I looked around a lot, didn't have much information for you guys, so I decided let's just daily this thing up real hard. So, with that said, we're just going to go ahead and go through each position, what we got, what we think is going to be beneficial for anyone who's setting the lineup this week with DraftKings, because that's typically what we use. And also our year longs just happen to fall in line with that usually. As far as the PPR league, 1 point per reception is just, I mean, it's huge, and you really have to factor that in. So with that said, we'll just jump right in today, and we'll get into the quarterback situation. Now, we talked before the show, and I think we were both on the same page that if you want to go out and get one of the big dogs this week, go ahead and do that. If you want to go ahead and take your Deshaun Watsons or your Patrick Mahomes and really just sink your teeth in. I think we talked about Allen maybe having his bounce
Yeah,
back with his juicy matchup.
I think Josh Allen's gonna have the bounce back against Seattle. We'll see. You never know, but
Yeah, so if you want to do that and you want to go that route, by all means, I would not judge you. But for anyone else out there who likes to, I love to do this, which is to kind of try to find a quarterback a little bit further down and hope he can just get you that 20-point week, and you could use the money somewhere else. That's kind of my strategy most weeks, unless I just have to have the quarterback at that high rate. So I think me and you both probably have a gem down there. Maybe not a gem, because this week was a little tougher if you ask me as far as finding a value at quarterback, but I know I have one, and I think you have one. So if you have one, go ahead and let me hear who you're thinking. Who's not one of those top dogs.
yeah. So like you said, I'm right on board with my brother. We discussed it a little bit earlier. I actually personally I do love Deshaun Watson this weekend. Like we said, we're not taking him. I think he's up in the ballpark of like $7,200 on DraftKings, and he's like 8,000 on FanDuel. Just a little too pricey for me. I like to try to balance out the roster with other things. And it's funny that my brother says, like, I'm trying to get that value pick that's going to get me to the like that 20-point like kind of number. I want him to land on 20. And this guy scored 20 points last week. And so I'm going to rock Drew Lock is who I'm going to go with for the
Nice pick. Yeah.
for the Denver Broncos. He's $5,200 on DraftKings, and I think that's a very fair value. So I was kind of looking up a few things. Well, first of all, Atlanta, the matchup with the Falcons, not a great defense. They're ranked here. Let's see. They've improved a little bit, but they're still ranked 23rd in the league against the pass, so nothing incredible. And Drew Lock, they've had him throw the ball 40 times a game. The last 40, he's attempted 40 passes the last 2 games per game. That's what he's averaging. And last week he ended up getting the 2 touchdowns, that you need against the Chargers, a weaker, kind of a weaker defense against the pass as well. But so he showed good numbers against a team that tends to give up some numbers against the pass. The week before that, they were facing the Kansas City Chiefs, and kind of the snow was coming down pretty well. He still threw for he's literally thrown for 254 yards and then 247 yards. In that Kansas City game, though, he turned the ball over twice. He threw 2 interceptions. He still got 14 fantasy points for people, though. So I'm hoping just go on that other, that other spectrum against Atlanta. He's not going to, I'm going to say, even if he does turn it over once, he will throw the couple touchdown passes. Kind of the weapons are basically there for him. And so I'm going to go with Drew Lock at $5,200 as someone that you can kind of, maybe target and maybe get yourself a 20 spot as your fantasy quarterback with some pretty good money value there that you can save and use it on some other positions that I think you need at a premium this week.
Yeah, so it's great. Right in my notes, I have Drew Lock. It's for a different reason, but I had that exact 249-yard, 3-touchdown game that he had last week, and so I'm with you. I think Drew Lock isn't a safe play, but I do think that he is value-wise a good chance.
Drew Lock is never a safe play, everyone.
Exactly.
I'm just gonna let you know that he is a wild card, but we'll see.
But that Atlanta matchup just feels real good. I love seeing them on the schedule. So I'm with you on Drew Lock. As for me, the reason I'm wearing this New York Giants has nothing to do with Daniel Jones. So don't worry, I'm not going down that route at all. That's not where I want to be at. For me, though, I'm going to pull right on that thread. You talked about the Chargers defense last week. Locke did go for 250 and 3 touchdowns. This week, they're going up against the Las Vegas Raiders and Derek Carr, $5,700 on DraftKings. I just love the matchup. The Chargers have given up a lot of passing touchdowns. The yards haven't quite, it's not like they've been giving up bundles and bundles of yards as of late, but they haven't given up the scores. And I just see Carr transitioning this week into back to where he was to start the year, where he was much better. The last couple games, ever since Kansas City after that bye week, hasn't really shown as good of performances as he was early in the year. I think he gets back on track. I think Waller's back to being healthy. I think Jacobs, looked great last week. So you got a run game to help you a little bit. But this Chargers defense for 5,700, that's where I'm looking to go with my Derek Carr pick.
Yeah, I love that pick. I also think it's one of those things where I'm a huge person in those value type of guys where Carr is a good play in my opinion. And you know me, I kept saying that I liked a Carr last week against the Browns. And I was like, dude, this is going to be a value pick. I was like, how's he less money than Ryan Fitzpatrick? Fitzpatrick is known. He's not going to play. He's on the bench, unless Tua gets. And I was like, all this value. And then he literally laid an egg. And I'm a huge advocate though for
law of averages.
For law of averages, he's going to have a bounce back game then. And since I wrote him, I took him last week. So for me, that might be someone I'm going to want to pencil in my lineup because he's, whenever he screws you over the week before, I'm willing to take that chance again and I'm going to ride that out. So for me, I love that Carr pick, and I think that's a good matchup. And I do think he will have a good game. It's funny, he was the other quarterback that I kind of went back and forth with.
Locke was my other one. That's funny. Locke was my other guy. Yeah. So it's funny. We're on the same mindset there for sure. Yeah, so we'll move on to running backs. And it's funny, you talked about the big dogs and all this stuff. We both are in dead agreement that Dalvin Cook is a must play. You get 2 running back spots, but Dalvin Cook is he's got the right matchup this week. He was absolutely amazing last week. He's almost in that must play category, So with that said, I wouldn't doubt anyone because, again, it's just like the quarterback when it comes to running back. If you want to play the big dogs, play them. But at the same time, if you want to save, we get that. Dalvin Cook is the play, but also with Christian McCaffrey coming back. I know he's more expensive than Dalvin Cook, but there has to be some people out there
and that's surprising to me. I told you that.
It's a little strange.
I think Dalvin Cook deserved the number 1 spot. For me, I think you had a great point where Christian McCaffrey, is there going to be a little bit of a pitch count? Like Mike Davis did look good while he was in his role. I'm not saying he's going to take carries from Christian McCaffrey, anybody. I'm not stupid. I realize that. But I do think there's going to be a little bit of a, he still has had a questionable tag all the way leading into this week and, still kind of that limited participant in practice and everything like that. And I'll let you take it back over. I know you made a great point though, because you're like, well, Christian McCaffrey, this is exciting. Whenever do you see him for that price tag, and
that's
even though it's still expensive, but for me, Dalvin Cook deserves that number 1 spot.
No, I agree. My only point, like you were getting at, was this is the cheapest you'll see him most likely, and unless he only plays 10 snaps, plays terrible, and they're like, oh, well, we don't know what's going on. But most likely he'll even just on a limited number. If he gets 20 touches in this game, McCaffrey's probably still going to give you 20 fantasy points, and then next week, bam, he's right back to $9,000 or something like that, and it's for good reason. I mean, the guy is a fantasy just absolute dynamo, and so I get that. So like I said, if you want to go McCaffrey, if you want to go Dalvin Cook, by all means, I think Dalvin Cook's the pencil in play just because he's going to get the carries, he's going to get the play. So I think we're both in agreement on that. But then as far as if you're looking down further for a running back, because you can't just line them up with big dogs. I mean, if you could do that, that'd be great. But then everyone would just have the same score. So if you look a little bit further down, I think for me, if you're looking for a cheaper option, I love David Johnson this week. Okay, and that's the Houston running back. And this week for me in particular, I know that the matchup is the main thing. So he's $5,600 on DraftKings, and man, Jacksonville has just been getting killed by the run. And on top of that, last meeting, David Johnson had 96 rush yards and 2 catches. So right there, you already know that he had 11 points last time. You throw in a touchdown on there, and he's having a nice day for you. But honestly,
looks like a great game at that point. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
Yeah. Instead of being a good game, it's a fantastic game, and I think he's the right play this week as far as looking at a value guy. And for me, it just really comes down to that matchup. Jacksonville has been getting absolutely torched on the ground, and I just think that in the air. I mean, they just haven't looked good defensively this year, and so I think it's the right play.
Yeah, I love that pick. I have him in my year-long league. He's normally on my bench. I actually am going to play him in my flex this week because I really do like the matchup. I'm hoping for the best there. For me, I'm going to go and I mean, I guess I was almost thinking you were going to do it, so I wasn't going to steal. So I wasn't going to steal it from you. So I had a couple other running backs on board, but I'm going to go with the U. And I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go DJ Dallas. I'm gonna go DJ Dallas. They just said Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde are out for Seattle. So for me, all of a sudden, I was looking at him as a $5,000 price tag, and I'm like, well, if Chris Carson's playing, that's pointless. You know what I mean? There's absolutely no value there at all. He's out. He's ruled out. DJ Dallas, I know he only had like 48 yards against the Niners,
monster.
But he had a touchdown, and then he had a receiving touchdown.
Yeah.
And so for me, if you're going to use him out of the backfield, and I like the way Seattle uses Chris Carson, and I think they see a little bit of that power back sort of, not saying he's Chris Carson, but they can use him in the same ways, I guess. I mean, I know it's not the same sort of talent, but Seattle's offense is explosive, so he's going to get chances to punch the ball in the end zone.
I watched him a lot at Miami, though. I think he's one of those good finds, honestly. So I think he does have a lot of similar, maybe not similarities, but a lot of the same abilities that Chris Carson could do in the same offense.
He runs mean. You know what I mean? I like watching him play, and I liked him in Miami. And he in 10 games he had like 700 rushing yards and had like 8 touchdowns on the ground and a couple through the air. So he knows how to get the ball in the end zone. He just, for me, is just an uber productive sort of talent. And so for me, a matchup against Buffalo, Buffalo's a pretty good team, but they're ranked 17th against the rush. Their defense, I think, has been a little notch below what everyone expected coming into the season. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. We were talking about Josh Allen a little bit before, maybe having his bounce-back effort in fantasy and overall, and so I think we might get a little bit of a shootout there. The game's at Buffalo. That'd be something to look into. Also, it could be some sort of, it could be cold weather. You never know what you're going to get out there in Buffalo. I've seen them play in straight up snowstorms.
Yeah.
So that also tends to lead to, a ground and pound sort of game. And for me, DJ Dallas is a good option for that. And so for $5,000, why not? I'm going to take Dalvin Cook as my other running back. So I gotta get the money somewhere. And so, or save money in places. So for me, Drew Lock and DJ Dallas will be a couple guys that I could save some money on. Just a quick name to throw out there. Someone else I really do like, kind of depending on Philip Lindsay's health. Melvin Gordon in the third facing Atlanta. If he gets all the carries, the bulk of the carries, I think he's going to have a big day. He's only. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Vic Fangio did say he expects Lindsey to play though.
That's what I
So
heard,
that's
and
my
that's
only thing.
and it's why I shied away from it. It turns his 25 carries probably into 15 carries, and
Yeah, that's
Lindsey
what I was
starts
thinking.
getting catches out of the backfield. Sorry if I end up making people shy away from him and he goes off, which might happen. But so that's why I stayed away from Melvin Gordon, just so everyone knows. But $5,300, good value. But for me, it's DJ Dallas this week.
Yeah, I like the pick. I didn't see when I was doing my research this afternoon. Carson still had a questionable tag, so I wasn't ready to commit to that. But I mean, that's a good find now. Now knowing the information that you got, I think it might be one of the better value picks that you can do. I still love David Johnson though for the 5,600. I think it was. I still love that pick. I'm not going to lie to you. I just think that in that offense is going to do some things against Jacksonville this week. So
I David Johnson. I have two right now. I have two locked in lineups on DraftKings for the main pot, and one of them is Dalvin Cook with DJ Dallas. The other one is Dalvin Cook with David Johnson. I love the matchup as well. So we're sticking with our pattern of great minds think alike, or just
or terrible minds,
or this is not looking too good, everybody.
The reason I feel good is I know I know I've seen you in fantasy on these dailies get top 15, top 10s. Even myself, I get a top 25, or I got a top 30, and I was like ecstatic, and I know you've been in the hunt, a couple times. So anytime I'm on the same trend as you, I'm feeling pretty good. So with that said, we'll move to wide receivers. I love the wide receiver position just because I feel like you almost can't go wrong these days. It seems like you go out there and you really just take a chance and whatever. I mean, like last night, if someone would have, played Valdez Scantling, he ends up getting 2 scores and 50 yards. I mean, he ends up with a big game. It's like
James for the Niners.
James.
Richie James is literally the reason I won $25 on DraftKings. So like
that's what I'm saying.
He cost like on the one show on the single game, he literally cost $300, and he literally went off. Of course, Davante Adams is one of the premier guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's safe to call me the best wide receiver in the league right now.
I really don't have an argument. Michael Thomas might have something to say when he's healthy, but I'll tell you what, right now, I don't think I can argue that, to be honest with you.
Go ahead and claim that, big dog. It's crazy. You can find value in a lot of places. You just gotta hope that you guess right, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can get a 0 out of it, or you can get a 25 spot.
Yep.
And then you got guys like DK Metcalf, who last week dropped a 40 spot, and you got the big dogs, the Hopkins and whatnot, who you're going to get a big number out of. But since today we're sticking on the value thread, and I'm trying to find value for people, and you are too. I went first last time. I'll let you go. I doubt we have the same person. There's so many wide receivers, I think, this week, but I'll let you go first, and let me know why and why you think this person has some value.
All right, so this one is a little it could be a little premature. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit for people. So I marked in Marvin Jones Jr.
No Galladay.
No
Stafford though, right?
But that's not exactly true. So I made sure anyways. I was like, okay, so their backup is Chase Daniel. So it'd be Chase Daniel would be the guy. He's, I think everyone knows him. He's been basically career back. He's a career backup. He was with New Orleans, Eagles, kind of under Drew Brees. A lot of great. He always backed up, a lot of really good quarterbacks. And then last year he was backing up in Chicago. And he did have one game he played in Chicago, though, and he threw for like 400 yards and like 4 touchdowns. And I'm not even going off of that where I think he's going to light up the world, even though I do like the matchup. Minnesota's pass defense has been horrendous this year. I'll look it up real quick. They're ranked 29th, so they're basically as bad as it gets in the league. Matthew Stafford, he only has to pass 4 straight days of the COVID protocol, and it's kind of weird because I read a Yahoo report, and it was his wife that said his wife and his family and Matt Stafford, they've all cleared it the last couple days. And so if he does clear it these next 2 days, he is going to be able to play on Sunday, is what I heard. Okay. And so that is a really big factor for me. I think I'll rethink the decision. I'll come back to it. I think I'll still stick with him, even if it is Chase Daniel. But right now, it's just my gut instinct. I'm going to go with it. He's going to be the number one option. He had like 7 targets last week. It wasn't even a lot of yards. He only had like 35 yards, but he got 2 touchdown catches. I think the offense is going to be able to move the ball against Minnesota. At $5,100, he slotted in as my basically, my number 3 wide receiver on my roster.
Right.
And so, he's you got to come up with a value guy. Other people I'm playing kind of mix and matching, like Julio Jones and Allen Robinson, DK Metcalf, the bigger name sort of guys. So you obviously need someone who's value. And for me, Marvin Jones Jr. is who I'm going to go with. I'm going to hope he just gets the targets with Golladay out. Man, maybe he gets 10 targets. Maybe he gets that game where he gets 7 catches, and 80 yards and a touchdown, and boom. That I'm incredibly happy with that. And so Marvin Jones Jr. will be the pick for me at $5,100 on DraftKings.
Okay. I love it if Stafford's playing. I'm not gonna lie to you. If it goes down to Chase Daniel, I'm staying so far away from that thing that you'll be surprised. And I could be wrong, like you said. It could be wrong, but I wouldn't, because I think what that'll do more than anything is Patricia is gonna put it in Swift's hands and not even give Daniel as much of a chance. The thing with the Bears last year, who knows? But I'm just saying, I think that'll change the game plan more than anything.
Well,
and so that's why I don't like it.
And if DeAndre Swift, Adrian Peterson, Kerryon Johnson, they have 3 different running backs that they could just force feed all day and just be like,
right.
All right, let's run the ball 40 times today and just see what happens, but.
And they might. So that's my only concern. If Stafford's there, I'm with you. I loved him as well. But I saw Stafford on the COVID list. I was like, oh, maybe not. So for me, first I'll tell you, I did have 2 guys in the 4,000 range, Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy. Don't play them both. I'm saying play one of them. 4,900 for Patrick, 4,700 for Jeudy. They're both on Denver. It's because you're lock pick, like you said, at quarterback. I think it's a great matchup. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's just a matter of if you actually think, and I'm pretty sure Patrick still has a questionable tag, so that would really lean me heavily towards Jeudy if Patrick doesn't play. But I think he is going to play. So if that does happen, Patrick's been more of a locks guy, so I would say lean that direction as well. But the matchup's just too juicy, and I would love to have a receiver at 4,900 who can just give me the targets, the catches, and possibly a touchdown. And I think he could be that guy. But for me, so I talk about this team every week, and I swear it's because I probably have 2 of the receivers, but it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, and I'm picking a guy that I actually don't even have because for me, is Deontay Johnson is a guy that has value this week because he's only $5,000. Okay, on DraftKings. So Juju and Claypool are both more expensive than him this week. And I get that there was an absolute dud laid by Deontay Johnson last week. He only got 2 targets, had a hamstring injury. Who knows? As long as he plays, though, generally, if he starts the game and goes full, a full game, Roethlisberger tends to have him as one of his favorite targets, if not the most targeted guy in most games that he plays. Before last game, he had been targeted at least 7 times in every single game. And for me, that's all I want. I just want the chances. And I'll be honest with you, there's so many mouths to feed there, but you know what I'm saying is you have to like the matchup, and you have to like, because they're playing Dallas. I mean, you have to like that matchup. And but then again, you have to like the matchup for who? That's the problem. You like the matchup for everybody, and so it makes it a little bit harder. So I'm just going with the one that's the cheapest, and just hoping that it works out for me at this point, because I obviously I have invested interest in Juju. I've invested interest in Claypool if one of them has a big game for my season long. But as far as daily is concerned, he's the cheapest by about $4,000. I think $4,000 or $5,000. I have behind Claypool at $5,000. I think he could even get 10 targets and end up getting a touchdown. So if you get 10 targets and a touchdown, you're looking at least 5 of those being catches, 50 yards, a touchdown. Man, I am so happy with that. And so I just think against the Dallas, team that's probably going to maybe put up 55 yards total, I think this is probably a great matchup, and I just love the play of one of them. It's just you got to really, really have the stones to play one and just only one and decide which one. And I'm going to do the cheaper one this week.
Yeah, I'm there with you. We always talk about all the mouths to feed in Pittsburgh, and it just makes it difficult because
So hard.
I feel like you're literally there's no middle ground. It's not like if you choose, if you end up choosing one of them, you kind of hit the home run, or you end up, ending
With
up with a
nothing.
guy who literally gets the one catch in 10 yards that game, and it's a wrap. And so it's difficult. It's always so hard for me to pull the trigger on any sort of Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver right now. If I was going to do it, I'd have the same strategy as you. I'm going to take the cheapest one. I know fresh in memory, the Tennessee Titans game, Deontay Johnson absolutely shredded them.
Yeah.
It's worth a
And then
shot.
last week,
He can,
Juju and Claypool, both had 15. So it's tough. That is just such a tough wide receiver core to pick from.
yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, I like it though. I mean, you can you know this is all. That's why we're saying you gotta take a chance. You have to save money somewhere. You know what I mean? It'd be beautiful if you could just pick all the
Yeah.
highest salary dudes, but there's kind of a boomer bust factor there, and all these guys we're saying, Deontay Johnson's definitely high up on that list of a boomer bust guy, and you hope you hit the boom, and so we'll see. A good pick, and you know good luck to everyone with that, and hopefully Big Ben, hopefully his eyes go go that way this week because there's a lot of weapons out there in Pittsburgh. Man, that's a good football team.
Oh, absolutely. So getting into the tight ends, I'll just jump in and go first so we can speed through it because tight end's an important position, but at the same time, the big dogs, like we always like to talk about, Kelsey is the only one that's the real big dog. With Kittle would have played last night, but he's out obviously. So because normally I just spend the money on the tight end. Honestly, most of the time, that's one position where I'm like they can make or break you a lot of times. So I end up spending a lot on, and it's a good strategy most weeks. Is honestly it usually ends up being Kelsey or Kittle, and both of them usually have a big game. So with that said, when we're thinking of tight ends though that might be a little bit more value wise, well this first one though, I put Waller and Noah Fant both on here, and it's just because now that we both picked these quarterbacks, it makes sense too. I love to stack my wide receivers or tight ends. What do you got? I can't see, it's too bright.
That's right. my
Yeah. Oh,
my
there you go.
my picks
Fant.
are my picks are Waller and Fant.
Yeah, no, that's perfect because that's exactly my picks too. But I mean, because the reason I didn't want to really use Waller is because he's the number two cost tight end. I mean, he costs 5,800 this week. There's just not as many
That's still a nice
apparently.
value though. That's still nice
Yeah,
value, everyone.
that's what I'm
That's
thinking.
not crazy
Well,
money.
you tell me why you want to take him then, because I have one more name that I guess I could go into. You tell me why Waller or Faint's a good pick.
Just because I think they're going to be the two main, I think both their quarterbacks I think have great matchups. We both talked about their quarterbacks earlier about the guys that we thought were great value. Both of these guys basically get targeted the most by their quarterbacks. I was going to talk about Noah Fant just because he was even cheaper. He's $1,200 cheaper than Waller. And like I said before, I love the Atlanta matchup, and I always like to match up who I use as my quarterback with one of his guys. If I'm thinking he's going to have a big passing day, I might as well choose one of his weapons because that means I think he's going to have a big day.
Always stack. Always
Yeah,
stack.
you gotta try. Last week he had 11 points. He had 7 catches, 47 yards. So literally, I understand that's not incredible, but we keep saying literally, if you just add a touchdown to some of these numbers, all of a sudden you're like, oh man, he dropped a 17 spot for me, and you're all excited for that sort of price at $4,600. That's a steal. And so I think I just always think that that Noah Fant, when he's healthy, he's kind of Drew Lock's like safety blanket. He's that tight end that's super athletic, go-to type guy. And then Waller, I mean, I think he's put himself into that,
He's
premier. He's
that
premier type top 5 tight end in the league sort of guy. So I won't talk too much about him, but Carr, absolutely, he's a target monster for Carr, and he gets a boatload of touches. And so for him, it's all about, for me, point per reception. I'm going to ride that out. And so for that price tag, I think that's a great matchup, as you talked about the matchup earlier against the Chargers.
Right.
I think it just works out, and so I think both those guys are great values this weekend and should be looked at heavily by people.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to take them both. I knew that both of us took them at quarterback, and I had them on my list, so I was like, "Oh, I'll just throw this in real quick." I'm like, "That's perfect. You want to stack if you can, and those are the perfect guys to stack with your quarterback."
Yeah.
So that was just why I jumped in. And I had one more guy on the list that, because sometimes I get real cheap on tight ends if certain guys have buys and stuff, or like when Kittle goes hurt earlier in the year, I would really look way down the list to try to look for a value guy. And for me, it's not a great matchup. It's middle of the road kind of a matchup. So it's not like you should be like, oh man, this is the best tight end matchup. But Logan Thomas at $3,700 for Washington. He's
Nice.
playing the New York Giants, which I think is around the 14th or 15th. They're middle of the road against tight ends. So you shouldn't be like so excited about the matchup. But the thing I'm excited about is, man, Thomas has looked good 2 weeks in a row. And man, there's one thing that I know about tight ends and running backs, and that's you can ride the hot hand. When it comes to wide receivers, it's kind of spotty at times, I feel like, but there's certain positions, tight ends and running back especially, man, like quarterbacks and receivers get on like waves too, but man, running backs and tight ends to me just seem like if they're hot, man, just play them, and Thomas has put up double-digit numbers 2 weeks in a row. Giants isn't a great matchup, but it's not a bad one either. And with how good Washington has been against the pass, I could see this game. I could see Washington, having a chance to get up early, and I think Thomas would be a reason for that. And I just like him recently, and so I just hope that, and I hate to say I hope on a fantasy show, but I hope that he gets targeted, because if he does, he'll make some things happen at tight end.
Yeah, I think, good matchup. I think who is it? McLaren or whatever at wideout
McLaren
is really, that other standout weapon for them. And
Mhm.
Kyle Allen is he's at least a serviceable, quarterback. I think with Dwayne Haskins, they were just I wouldn't even risk, playing
Right.
anybody on their roster just because their
Well,
quarterback
man,
just
Gibson's been good. I have Gibson in my season long.
yeah.
Antonio Gibson, the running back, he's been solid, man.
Yeah, and that's a great pick, but but it's kind of I feel like you only get decent running back numbers if you do have like a competent quarterback where they can't
Right.
just load the box on you and just
Look
go
at
for it.
Zeke.
Yeah, and yeah, Zeke's seasons just turn into a nightmare
I'm about to
without
start
Dak
Gibson
Prescott.
over Zeke this week. I mean, that's literally what I'm trying to figure out in my season long. Should I start Zeke or should I start Gibson? I mean, that's where I'm at though with Dak going down. I mean, you're right. You need to have some quarterback presence though.
Yeah, yeah.
If
I mean,
Dalton wasn't playing, there'd be no chance. But since Dalton might play, if Dalton was not playing, there'd be zero chance that I would even play Zeke, because that guy
well,
that played last week.
well,
Jeez,
and
that was
so
bad.
yeah, and so for even with all the value that we've talked about, I was gonna wait to get to the defense and be like, so I won't blame anybody for just going ahead and paying the $4,900 and taking the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Dallas Cowboys. I literally I balanced out mine and I have the money for it, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. Like the only thing that would happen is if the Pittsburgh Steelers are just so uninterested in this game because they get up too heavily that they just start finally giving up some stuff. But I just the Cowboys, man, ever since they've lost Dak, that offense has just been horrendous. They're 26th in the league. There's not a whole lot to be excited about. They turn the ball over, they don't score, they're just it's kind of a nightmare out there in the Big D. And Jerry's world is slowly just collapsing. And I gotta lie, I don't really care. And so I don't blame anybody who wants to take the Pittsburgh Steelers defense and pay that price tag. I'm never a person that like loves to pay the heavy price for defense. And this season, it's just so. I mean, you can look through the defenses, and I'll be like, no, that's not a great matchup. Indy's had a good defense. They're playing Baltimore. Don't love it. I think Kansas City's defense is decent. They're not a crazy fantasy defense, but maybe against the Panthers, I'm looking through stuff, and I'm like, nothing incredible. I like Baltimore versus Indy at 3,500. You talked about a little bit about Washington. Washington defense is a little bit underrated, and going against the Giants, who, but against the Giants, so I will say, ever since Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate kind of have came back healthy, their offense doesn't look as bad anymore. Because then you got Slayton on the outside, and
Shepard's been great too.
Yeah, I don't look down on them as much. For me, with Gardner Minshew being out, Houston, I know their defense is awful, everybody. I'm not saying Houston has a good defense, but this is a 1 week sort of thing. The Houston Texans at $3,100 against Jacksonville with no Gardner Minshew. Might just be something to look at, just to throw it out there, is kind of rolling with the value theme. Otherwise, man, I might just go ahead and take the powerhouse everybody and go with the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Dallas Cowboys.
All right. Well, in your little rundown there, you definitely got on my team because I was the same way. If you take Pittsburgh, I wouldn't blame you, but I still don't think I've ever taken the top defense just because I just don't like to do it. I don't think it's a for sure thing on defense. It's more so just which team's either going to get a touchdown or get multiple turnovers. It never usually is the top defense because usually the best defense just goes 3 and out and keeps getting 3 and outs, but they don't get the turnovers and stuff. So I will say that I agree with you on the Steelers thing. Let me just tell you my recent recommendations, just in anyone that wants my track record, last 4 weeks, Bucks, Philly. I took the Philly back-to-back the last 2 weeks, Indy and the Bucks the first week. Okay. That's 6 points for Tampa Bay, 4 points for Indy. Not looking that good. But then my 2 Philly picks, 9 points and 20 last week. Okay. So that's where my track record's at. And I am taking Houston as my defense. Okay. Against Jacksonville. No Gardner Minshew. Okay, do you know who the starting quarterback is?
No, I should have looked it up, but I don't.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't know who the starting quarterback is. I didn't either. I had to look it up. It is Jake Luton. Okay, quarterback from the 6th round. Okay, they're not even going to go with Mike Glennon. I have no idea. It's going to have zero confidence in anything Jacksonville is going to be doing unless they are just turning around and handing the ball off. So I think if Houston too, that high-powered offense gets up and you put this Luton kid in a position where he's got to throw the ball, I'm seeing turnovers and I'm just like, just pick 6 me one. That's all I'm thinking. Yeah. So I'm with you. The defense averages 2 points a game. It's a terrible defense to choose, but you know what? There's certain weeks where you just say, I'm going to do it this week. And that's going to be me this week. I'm going to go ahead and take the chance on Houston.
No, for sure. They're who I picked up in my year-long league as well. I was rocking, the sequence I had where I was having good weeks where I had the Dolphins and the Philadelphia Eagles as well. Philadelphia literally won me my
last week, me as well. Week. 20.
Yeah. But they're on a bye, so I had to drop them. I don't, not even I love Philly's defense anyways.
The Patriots was available in my league, so I went New England.
New England? Oh, against the Jets, right?
Yeah.
Using any defense against the Jets isn't that bad of an idea either. I'm already hearing Trevor Lawrence, the whispers of him pulling an Eli Manning and being nah, I ain't playing for the New York Jets, guys.
But yeah, so at least we're on the same page. I love the Houston pick. I'm not going to lie to you. I know it could go south because honestly, maybe this Jake Luton kid's the truth. I don't know. But what I will tell you is that we're on the same page there. So we've hit every position in the fantasy show. So as far as for our YouTube subscribers, everybody, thank you for tuning in on this particular show. The podcast will continue for a short stint as far as it's going to be Green Bay and San Francisco, last night's game, what we saw, and then what we think about their potential futures, maybe not like year-longs, but just what we see in the short term. So we're going to talk some San Francisco, Green Bay Packers. But as far as fantasy-wise, man, we really appreciate you guys tuning in. So if you want to listen to the podcast, go to the Sport Bros on Tap podcast and give it a listen for the rest of the show. It's about 37 minutes in if you want to fast forward and catch up where you were. So everybody, thank you for listening in on our fantasy show, though. Cody?
Yeah, thank you all for giving the fantasy show a listen, and hopefully you find some value out there and you get some guys going off for you and win a little bit of money this weekend, huh? And just remember, it's not always about the big wins. It's just about getting that money back in the account. Keep it playing, keep having fun, and so hopefully some of those value guys help you out. And if not, don't be mad at us and enjoy some Sunday football and have some fun and come back and give us another listen. So thank you guys so much.
Eventually you want the win though. So, all right. Thanks everybody. And continuing on the podcast, Sport Bros on Tap podcast. Thanks guys.